Welcome into Mindful Monday, March 16th. Hello, namaste, good morning. And today we're diving into Creating True Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh, which, I don't know, I probably say it about every book by Thai, but this is probably one of my favorites. This is such a beautiful book about finding a heart of peace. And he had lots of stories as a young monk in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And they have some really, really great meditations, some exercises, beautiful stories. This was a great book. So today we're going to be diving into Creating True Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh. This is a library book, so I made several notes. And then I ordered a copy of this to keep. So when that comes in, then I'll have to transfer my little notes. But for today, we'll be deciphering some of my library book notes. And on the very first page, number 1 page, he says that all of us can practice non-violence. We begin by recognizing that in the depths of our consciousness, we have both seeds of compassion and the seeds of violence. We become aware that our mind is like a garden that contains all of the seeds of understanding, seeds of forgiveness, seeds of mindfulness, and also seeds of ignorance, fear, and hatred. We realize that at any given moment, we can behave with either violence or compassion, depending on the strength of those seeds within us. We talked about true watering, or mindful watering, selective watering, several times in the lives and in videos. And I think this book is really important for especially polarizing times, about watering seeds of peace and compassion within us. And this was our book study book for the past 30 days. So in 30 more days, we'll have our next book study, which was the 4 Agreements. But this was the one that we talked about and studied yesterday. And lots of good conversations came about talking about injustice and what does it mean to be just. And a question that was brought up in discussion was talking about the relationship between justice and punishment, which is a very interesting think piece. What do I have today? This is lemon ginger. It's a pretty good one. So most of the tabs that I marked have to do with nonviolence, because this is a book on nonviolence. And a couple pages deep, he talks about the violence that we do to ourselves, which I thought was, I think I posted a TikTok about it. I put it on my Instagram. I was like, wow, this is profound. He says, when we hold back our feelings and ignore our pain, we are committing violence against ourselves. The practice of nonviolence is to be here, to be present, and to recognize our own pain or despair. When we do not make war on our feelings or reject them, but just recognize, embrace, and transform them. When anger or fear is present in us, we bring awareness to it. We smile to it and call it by its true name. Hello, my fear, I know you are there. We can follow our mindful breathing to help calm our feeling. Breathing in, I am aware fear is present in me. Breathing out, I calm my feeling of fear. There's the skills of mindful awareness, and you can use that to identify your feelings and validate your feelings too. Breathing into your body and reminding yourself that you see you. Breathing in and recognizing the feeling of despair, of fear, of depression, anxiety. Give it a name, give it space, allow it to be seen, to allow it to go again. Yes, I am aware of my insecurities. Breathing in, I recognize that they're there, and breathing out, I smile with awareness. Just simply giving yourself space to be seen can be very soothing. And if you are like me and you had a rough upbringing that didn't have a lot of encouragement, there was some, but it was sparse. And I have had to work in my adult life to be that positive sounding board, to validate my own feelings, to breathe in, to see myself and allow myself to be seen. And he goes on to say that by making the time to practice for yourself, you are not wasting your efforts. On the contrary, you are using your time wisely. The Buddha taught us not to neglect ourselves, but to take care of ourselves. He encouraged us to practice intelligently, to look deeply into our suffering, and to take effective action to transform it. To be helpful to others, you have to give yourself permission to practice for yourself. You cannot neglect yourself. No one is more worthy of your kindness and compassion than you are. I thought that was really nice. Jack-o'-lantern said, intrusive thoughts I know aren't mine. I think that's an important piece to tell yourself too, is that those inner narratives that are very negative and self-deprecating and judgmental, that's not your inner voice. Those are messages from the past, trauma. Your own inner voice, your own inner narrative is always loving, always kind, always supportive. That's your highest self, your connection to whatever spiritual realm you believe in. Excuse me. There's also great practices for deep relaxation. The meditations in here are really beautiful. There's one for deep relaxation that I'm gonna record. I don't know if I have time to do it this week because it'll probably take me 40 minutes, but maybe. Who knows? I looked at my calendar this morning and it was a little overwhelming. I packed my week per usual. I'm trying to be more mindful of that. I will say that a lot of this book, he talks about the Vietnam War and about the effect that that had on him as a meditator and as a teacher. It had a very profound impact on Thich Nhat Hanh. Many of his students were killed, and he talks about that and writes about the effects of war, and I think that that's important now. Because he could have been very jaded. He could have taken that and sought revenge, but instead he became a Zen Buddhist master. Good morning, Bianca. I'm flipping through my million tabs. This is a great little excerpt. As you grow in mindfulness, you take your life back, which I can definitely attest to. The more mindfulness that I practice, the more power that I feel like I have, the more confidence I have, the more peace I have, the less I seek things outside of myself. Thanks, Bianca. You begin to see how much time we lose in empty consumption. When we are consuming, we are also being consumed. We have become the objects of other people's consumption. The Buddha said, dear friends, you are being eaten by form and by feelings. You are being consumed. We make ourselves into merchandise for other people. We want to be alluring, sought after, so we buy new clothes or new perfume. We work out at the gym to make ourselves more attractive and turn ourselves into objects of desire for other people, other consumers. Although we must take care of ourselves, we do many things because we believe this kind of consumption will bring happiness. Ouch, as an American. We should look more deeply to see that this consumption brings us no happiness, only suffering. This book really shook my mindful consumption too. I was like, wow, let me look at why I'd be doing things. I know, and I've been talking to Bianca said so true, I wish they taught this in US schools. I've been talking to my 7-year-old about mindful consumption, about motivation for why we do things that we do, and external validation, which are hard concepts for a child to understand, but we live in a society where most of her friends are going to subconsciously engage in all of that. And so, I give her a peek of awareness there. And I also came across the 5 mindfulness trainings in this book, and I'll definitely be making some videos about those. Probably yap about them for the remainder of this little video, because they're pretty central to mindfulness training, mindfulness adaptation into your own life. And the 5 mindfulness trainings, Thich Nhat Hanh brought those to the West in a way that was digestible for us. And I don't know, I really feel like he started the path for a lot of American teachers to go down this path in the 70s, because Thich Nhat Hanh joined the monastery in the 40s. And by the end of the Vietnam War, I think he was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. So he's been a teacher a very, very long time, and kind of set the pathway for a lot of Western teachers like Ram Dass, Jack Kornfield. Those are the only 2 names coming to mind of the guys. But the 5 mindfulness trainings are, the first one is reverence for life. Aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I vow to cultivate compassion and learn ways to protect the lives of people, plants, animals, and minerals. I am determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to condone any act of killing in the world, in my thinking, or in my own way of life. I think that's pretty powerful. He also talks about not being a passive activist either, which is another reason why I think this book is a very important piece of learning and teaching others how to be a strong, mindful, and compassionate voice in a time where we are lacking compassion. And I feel compelled to continue teaching that, which is hard. Bianca said, yes, it's like how people say you cannot truly be pro-peace without also being anti-war. Yes. And it's challenging as somebody, I have a very tumultuous past with violence in my own life. And, I was a fighter. And I've kind of always believed that that's the way to achieve peace in some way. And now that I'm saying that out loud, I think, how silly. But, as I walk this path of peace, I've come to know and understand that violence only begets more violence. And there's a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that Ty quoted in here that was really profound. And he said, "Through violence, you murder the hater, but you do not murder the hate. It is only through peace that hate ceases, And so reverence for life, the first mindfulness training, is about being aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life and vowing to cultivate compassion and be active in prevention of people who violate the reverence of life. I don't think that's always true, Jack-o'-lantern. And there are lots of stories in this book about ways that a calm energy can be a lot more effective than a violent one. And I do agree with that, which is why these trainings are challenging. And to be a voice of peace in a time of violence is challenging. It is hard. There's nothing easy about it. And yes. The second mindfulness training is generosity. Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression, I vow to cultivate loving kindness and to learn ways to work for the well-being of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I vow to practice generosity by sharing my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in real need. I am determined not to steal and not to possess anything that belongs to others. I will respect the property of others, but I will prevent others from profiting from human suffering or the suffering of others on this planet. That's also a really hard one. Bianca said, absolutely. I have to rewire our brains and undo the capitalistic societal programming. Yes. Yes. There's lots of work to be done with reprogramming, and as a Western American person myself, I have to do lots of pausing and being mindful of my consumption with food, you know, the high processed stuff that we have here. And this is not even like a health talk at this point. It's just not nutrition for our bodies. And if your bodies aren't getting the nutrients that it needs, your mind cannot thrive. You can't think. And so being mindful of consumption with body, being mindful of consumption with eyes, you know, what are you consuming with your eyes, with your brain, with your heart? I like the verbiage of not possessing anything that should belong to others. I think sometimes the entitlement of our upbringing can get the best of us. Trying to be mindful with my words. A couple weeks ago, I got flagged and banned. I probably was talking about politics, honestly, and I'm treading a little lightly these days. Sorry. But the message of mindfulness is really important, and so I want to continue to talk about ways to cultivate peace within. And that was a big note of this book too, was the way to cultivate peace outward is to first cultivate peace inward. When we are done with the war within, if we can bring calm to within, peace kind of just happens around us. And finding steadiness inside when things are very unsteady on the outside can be a very powerful tool for activism as well. So the second mindfulness training was generosity. The third is sexual responsibility, which is being aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct. I vow to cultivate responsibility and learn ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, family, and society. I vow to not engage in harm in this way. And I think that's an important mindfulness training too. The fourth mindfulness training is deep listening and loving speech. Aware of the suffering caused by the inability to listen to others in unmindful speech, I vow to cultivate deep listening and loving speech in order to bring joy and happiness to others and relieve others of their suffering. Knowing that the world can create true happiness or suffering, I vow to learn to speak truthfully with words that inspire self-confidence, joy, and hope. I am determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain, and not to criticize or condemn things that I am not sure of. I will refrain from uttering words that can cause division or discord, or cause the family or community to break. I will make all efforts to reconcile and resolve all conflicts, however small. This is a really hard one for me in particular. Not that using loving speech is challenging, but refraining from words that cause division or discord or cause division in community is hard when you live in a very polarizing time. And so vowing to learn to speak with words that inspire or create hope, that bridge instead of divide, I think that that's a really good intention to have. And deep listening is how we can move away from misunderstanding, which is the true enemy, not people. Our enemy is misunderstanding, is not being able to hear each other or understand each other, not each other. And so deep listening and loving speech are ways that we can bridge those gaps that exist between you and I when we can lovingly engage with each other. And the fifth mindfulness training, which we've been talking about low-key the whole time, is mindful consumption. This one is really, really challenging. And I feel like when I first started my mindfulness journey, mindful consumption was really heavy on my mind because I was listening to a lot of true crime. I was watching a lot of true crime. It's just kind of like always what I consumed. And it was the first thing that I gave up was true crime. Mindful consumption. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful consumption, I vow to cultivate good health, both mental and physical, for myself, my family, and my society by practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming. I vow to only ingest items that preserve peace, well-being, and joy in my body and in my consciousness, and in the collective body and consciousness of family and society. I understand that a proper diet is crucial for self-transformation and for the transformation of society. I am determined not to use alcohol or any other intoxicant or ingest food items that contain toxins, such as certain TV programs, magazines, books, films, and conversations. I am aware that to damage my body or my consciousness with these poisons is to betray my ancestors, my parents, my society, and my future generations. I vow to work to transform violence, fear, anger, and confusion in myself and in society by practicing mindful eating for myself and for society. That's a really intense and heavy one. I swapped it for documentaries too, Bianca. Being mindful of TV programs, of books, magazines, music, you start to become aware of the energies in those things, the energies that are in, a 7-hour mini-series about murder. And I said this last night in book club, but when I stopped consuming true crime all the time, my anxiety got better too, because I was not as hyper vigilant all the time, believing that at any moment somebody could come in and kill me. Which I guess could be true, but when I'm consuming materials all the time to remind me of that, it's hard to relax. I'm in the shower stressed out that I can't see through my shower curtain and, an axe murderer could come through, which is like, come on. To be consumed by those thoughts is exhausting, and instead now I can think about birds. I can think about my breath. I can think about my business plans. I can think about gratitude. I have control of my mind again because I'm more mindful of what my mind is consuming. This book also inspired me to be more mindful of my meat consumption too, which has been a challenge. Bianca said, and I feel like our bodies don't know the difference between real and a show. There's actually studies about that, about the nervous system. And when you are exposing yourself to images and stories that continually give you the fight or flight response, if you're continually consuming images and TV shows like that, you are essentially activating your nervous system constantly. And your brain doesn't know the difference between being chased by, you know, a serial killer or you in the dark watching the show, you know, scared with your heart beating like that. So I definitely felt better when I stopped consuming materials like that, for sure. Here's the quote I was looking for. I've been thumbing through looking for this quote about misperception. And he says, our enemy is never the other person. Our enemy is wrong perception and suffering within him or her. And especially in times where things are very polarized and there is a lot of energy of hatred, anger, fear, the misconception is the enemy, not the other person. And this book was beautiful, teaching about how to listen with compassion. And I love this little quote. He said, listening to someone with compassion can turn her into a friend. It may be that no one else has ever been able to listen to them. Perhaps you are the first capable of listening and giving her the relief that she needs. You become the bodhisattva, a being who ends suffering. You lose an enemy and win a friend. And he goes on to talk about a story out of the Vietnam War. It's a pretty short one, so I'm going to read it to you. During the war in Vietnam, both sides operated and reacted out of fear. During any war, the war within you, the war with your parents, your partner, children, the war with your neighbors, the war between nations, we act and react out of fear. When you act out of fear, you cause harm and destruction to yourself and others. Fear is the product of ignorance and a lack of compassion, which are very much the atmosphere of war. Fear feeds off ignorance, whereas compassion and lucidity flower from understanding. Deep listening and loving speech can stop a new anger and fear from arising, as well as transforming long-held misconceptions and suffering. With mindfulness, we can protect ourselves from danger. And I very much agree with that. And Jack-o'-lantern says, suffering is a part of the human experience, I feel. Unfortunately, it can't be rid of. Well, in the Four Noble Truths, which are part of the principles that the Buddha teaches, there are four noble truths, and one is that there is suffering. 2 is that there is an origin of suffering. 3 is that the end of suffering is possible. And 4 is there is a path to the end of suffering. And this is why I study these materials, is to end that suffering within myself. And to end suffering, you end suffering within yourself. And how you end suffering within yourself is to let go of everything. To not cling to memories, to not cling to the past. Yes, detachment is the key. Impermanence and detachment, to know that everything will end and to let go of it all. Which is so hard. These are really hard concepts, and that's why it's a practice. Practicing every day to let go a little further and to fall into the abyss of yourself a little bit more every day. And then when you find the end of suffering, then you teach other people how to get there too. Bianca said, "This feeling is temporary" is a mantra I use often. Me too. It'll pass. Everything does. Like leaves on a stream. Everything will pass. Every feeling, every relationship, every hurt, every happy. Everything is temporary and everything will pass. And I find comfort in that. I found a lot of comfort in detachment, is that even the pain won't last forever. Even the suffering won't last forever. It will pass. It all does. It hurts while it's happening, for real. But hold on and it'll pass. I'm looking through my notes. This was such a beautiful book. Probably one that I will cherish for my life. I've thought about writing a workshop about it because it was such a great book about resisting watering the seeds of hatred within, resisting watering the seeds of violence within, Creating True Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh. And I got mine for like $8 on thriftbooks.com, which I bought twice. I shipped it to my old address. And when I emailed them, they were like, "That's on you," which is fair and true. So I just had to accept that and move on and buy it again. Which is crazy. My husband did the exact same thing with a pillow. He ordered a pillow to our old address. Both of us during Mercury retrograde, really doing the most. Another aspect of creating peace and joy is to find community, which I really loved. The Sangha, the community. Thanks, Bianca. I know, I seriously send everybody there. And there are a couple places that I would love to sponsor me someday is thriftbooks.com. Sponsor me, send me books, send me gift certificates. Also, Powell's books in Portland. That would be so sick. I grew up going there. And I think it's one of the biggest bookstores. I don't want to say on the West Coast because I don't feel like that's true, actually. It's a big one, though. I feel like Seattle probably has a bookstore that's bigger. Anyway, he talks about the beauty of the Sangha, our friends, our meditation people. And if you don't have meditation friends, we can be meditation friends, you and I can be your Sangha. The Sangha is the community of friends who practice ways of harmony, awareness, and compassion. In the Sangha, we practice mindful walking and mindful breathing. The Sangha radiates the collective energy that can support us and make us strong. The Sangha is a boat that transports us and prevents us from sinking into the ocean of suffering. It's important to take refuge in your community when you struggle, to take refuge in yourself, to let the community hold you up. Which is why I do so many community things. If you're online with me and you don't live locally, I have an online community too in my app. There's like 50 people in there. You can talk to other people who are also doing mindfulness. There's a link in my bio to join the app, and we'd love to hear you. I post something every day in the app, and sometimes people ask questions, sometimes they're just in the forum saying hello. But if you are struggling with community, there's an online way. And if you're in my area in Portland, Vancouver, then join us on Wednesdays every Wednesday evening, minus a couple, but I always post about the ones that were not there. From 7 to 8, we meditate for 30 minutes and then spend 30 minutes in community. I do have an app. It's through Spaces, through Wix, and eventually I'll have an app through the App Store. But those things are not free, so we'll get there. According to my friend Alex, who does my nails, who also is an astrologer and a very gifted medium, she said that 2028 is my year. And I was like, okay, 2 more years, I can do that. So maybe in a couple years, we'll have an app. So if you need community, there's a little online community for you through the app. There's a link in my bio for that. I'm going to read this little section called Creating Peace in the World. I think it's important, so I'm going to share it with you. The antidote to violence and hatred is compassion. There is no other medicine. Unfortunately, compassion is not available in drugstores. You have to generate the nectar of compassion in your heart. The teaching of the Buddha gives us the means to generate the energy of compassion. If we are too busy, if we are too carried away by every day, by our projects, our uncertainty, our cravings, how can we have time to stop and look deeply into the situation, our own situation, the situation of our loved ones, the situation of our family, of our community, and the situation of our nation and of other nations? Looking deeply, we find that not only do we suffer, but also other people suffer deeply. Not only our group suffers, but the other group suffers as well. Once awareness is born, we know that punishment, violence, and war are not the answer. The one who wants to punish is inhibited by violence. The one who endures the suffering of the other person is also inhibited by the energy of violence. Violence cannot be ended by violence. The Buddha said that responding to hatred with hatred can only increase hatred 1,000-fold. Only by responding to hatred with compassion can we disintegrate hatred. And he goes on to talk about when he came to the West in the late 1960s to call for the end of the Vietnam War. He was banned from Vietnam. He was exiled. He was kicked out of his country. He wasn't allowed to be with his Sangha, with his students. He wasn't allowed to see his family. He could not go back to Vietnam at all. And during that time, he spent great time in contemplation and cultivating that deep peace of in his heart of compassion. When, you know, he could have been overtaken by anger, of hatred and retaliation, and we wouldn't be reading this book. And you can respectfully disagree. That's the point of being human, I guess, is to be able to say, I don't agree with that. I didn't agree with this either until I deeply studied it and I meditated about the well-being of all beings, and then I changed my mind. I grew in my heart and in my capacity to understand humans, and my mind changed. So I do believe that's possible for others, if it's possible for me. He has this really great little ending that I'm going to read for you. It's the meditation for nonviolence, which is beautiful. So I'm going to share that with you. This is the meditation for nonviolence. Let us offer the world the best flowers and fruits of our practice: lucidity, solidity, brotherhood, understanding, and compassion. Let us give rise to the determination to look deeply into the nature of fear, anger, hatred, and violence, and give rise to the eyes of compassion. Breathing in, I am aware of violence within myself and within the world. Breathing out, I am determined to look with the eyes of compassion at the violence within myself and around the world. In this very moment, we invoke all of our spiritual teachers to be with us, to help us embrace the suffering of our nation. We ask them to embrace the entire world as one nation, to embrace humanity as a family. We ask their help as we become lucid and calm so that we know exactly what to do and what not to do. We know that many people at this very moment are trying to rescue others, to support them, to ease their suffering. Let us be there for all of them and embrace them tenderly with all our compassion, understanding, and awareness. We know that with the energy of mindfulness, concentration, and awakened wisdom, we can practice to lessen violence every day. We know that responding to violence with compassion is our only path. Let us bring our awareness into our breath and to our out-breath. We are aware of the presence of all our spiritual ancestors within us, supporting and guiding us on the path of nonviolence, of understanding and compassion. And that's the very end of it. This was probably one of my favorite books. Peace in Every Step and Silence are really good ones too, but creating true peace within yourself, I believe, is the remedy that we all need. And through peace, I have attained immense power because nobody can rattle me or activate my fight or flight system or invoke fear in me. I am calm, cool, and collected because of the inner peace that I have cultivated. And it's fairly unshakable. Ooh, thank you, Bianca. Good morning, Pringles. And before, I would get really activated, and I would shake, my adrenaline would come at me, and I would stumble on my words. And now I take a breath inward and I'm able to control my heart rate, my breathing, and have a more cohesive and kind energy, which is more effective. It is more powerful. I've had both types of power, the angry, aggressive energy of yelling and fighting people, and the energy of love, of compassion, of calm, and this is a more powerful energy. And I took my power back by finding peace. I did not have power as a child, I didn't have these skills as a child, but as an adult, I can take my power back by remaining calm, present within my own being, by being a strong support within myself. Those are things that have increased my internal power tenfold as an adult. And I think that if I would have been taught these skills earlier in life, that it would have been a different story. But my caretakers were not in a mindful way to be teaching mindfulness. So as a grown-up, I've taken my power back in that way and created an island of peace and tranquility within myself. We were reading out of Creating True Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh today. Bianca said, taking your power back is so important for getting out of victim mentality. Yes, it really helped a lot. I struggled with that. There are several meditations in this book that are really beautiful for looking at emotions very deeply. That's on page 46, and I highly recommend it. It's a really good one. Looking at the roots of my fear, I breathe in, smiling to the roots of fear, I breathe out. Following the roots of things back inward and allowing it some space. And allowing those feelings to be seen, to be heard, and we were just talking about it earlier, letting them go, letting those feelings dissipate. Because the holding on is what creates the suffering. All Buddhist materials talk about that, about clinging. The clinging on is what creates the suffering. We hold on to the hurt, I'm never letting this go, and it creates pain, suffering, anger, resentment, fear. Sometimes people think that if I let go, it means that I'm allowing it or saying that it's okay, but really, in holding on to a spiked object, who are you hurting? You. And I don't think that I really understood that concept until I began to let go a little bit of the stuff in my heart. And then I began to feel at ease. And that feeling of ease has kept me coming back for mindfulness, to practice. I want to keep practicing and keep getting more aware, more mindful, and continue that letting go. This was our book club book, which, by the way, I do have an online version of book club. I do for next month too. Next month we're reading The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and it'll be on the 19th, which is a Sunday. The online version is from 3 to 4, so we'll meet on Zoom. You'll get the Zoom link when you sign up for the class. And I'm gonna sneeze in a second. I hate that feeling. And we have our little discussion. We talk about the book, different things that came up in the book that were fun. Oh, I didn't add it to my website yet. Let me add it really quick. So it should be a fun one. I've read The Four Agreements several times, so I have a lot of good study notes for that one. This has been an interesting live, a fun one. If you're new to me, there's lots of fun, helpful stuff on my website. Lots is free. Lots of workshops and online courses. The Body Keeps Score is a really good one. The Untethered Soul is on my desk. That's a good one too. I like those ones. I have so much shadow work. There's like thousands of shadow work prompts on my website. So if you're looking to get into yourself a little bit, there's lots of help. I have the app, which the courses are a little easier to do through the app, by the way. So if you're doing courses and doing like shadow work, it's easier on the app. You can just go through the modules because it's designed for the app. There are some online courses coming up, and I'm trying to put a little more online resources out for my people that don't live locally. I love to gather in person, but I know some of you guys don't live close. So, you know, I'm gonna put some online stuff. So I'm gonna add April's book club. I gotta write that on my calendar. I won't do it. Yay. Thanks for joining me for Mindful Monday. We were reading out of Creating True Peace. If you didn't catch the full live, I'm going to put this on YouTube at the end of the day so you can catch up. You can watch while you're doing the dishes or something. That's why I'm trying to always read the comments. And so we will be back next week with our next Mindful Monday. I feel like we're being consistent. We're doing good. And I'll be back next week, and I'll cut right here for my YouTube. Thanks, everybody. Have a nice week.